Yep. What's up, Nerfers, and welcome back to my channel, where today I'm taking a look at the brand new and improved XYL Unicorn Tactical Edition. This was sent to me thanks to Out of Darts in the USA. I'll leave a link to them down below. And for today's video, I'm going to try a pros and cons based format. So let's get started with what I like about this blaster. First and foremost, I like that this is actually a power upgrade over the original. I'll show you the full Chrono Test later on, but I'm getting highs of around 220 FPS out of this thing straight out of the box. Quite impressive compared to the original Unicorn that only averaged around 150. I also like the nice thick nylon material XYL have used for the external construction. Compared to the ABS plastic that most companies use, such as Hasbro, Dart Zone, or X-Shot, this blaster feels much sturdier and more like an airsoft replica or gel blaster in quality, which we owe to XYL's past experience making the ARP9. People also praise the included XYL magazine for its more reliable feeding compared to worker Talons. While this is more applicable to AEG blasters, which this isn't one of those, I think it's still worth mentioning if you want to upgrade because they are sold separately, or just stick with the Talons you might already have because Talons work fine in manual springers like this one. A pretty unique feature of the Tactical Unicorn is the wraparound C-clamp pump grip. Basically, this is a slimline version of what you might find on an old Nerf Alpha Trooper, and there's a return spring inside that closes the breech when you let go. Now, because the main body of this thing is the same as the original, it keeps those handy takedown pins. They're held in really tight and won't come out during use, but when you give them a good firm pull, you gain access to the fully metal plunger assembly for servicing and lubrication. From memory, the internals of the original were plastic and these ones are now metal. They also include a lot of spare O-rings and screws with the blaster to allow you to keep it maintained. In addition to those metal internal parts, this tactical version also has an added buffer tube portion at the rear, which allows for a much longer and more powerful spring. This is where that extra power comes from, and in my opinion, it doesn't really feel any heavier to prime than the old one. At the back, there's a screw cap, which you could use as another way to change the spring, but due to how powerful that spring compression is, I found removing the pins to be the much quicker way to get the spring back in again. The longer handguard allows for a longer barrel, better suited to the longer spring. And the barrel is actually threaded this time, although I wouldn't recommend removing it because the pusher seals so tight into it that mine came unscrewed with the barrel. I ended up adding some red Loctite to the pusher thread, and I also did the same with the orange spring guide on the plunger, because that was also coming loose, but that was from just firing the blaster. With that said, let's move on to the other negatives. My first one of those is that in the box you only get one stationary pick rail, so you have to choose either to put it on the top for a sight like I have, or if you don't like the C-clamp grip, you could add it on the bottom of that and use your own grip instead. Personally, I quite like the C-clamp grip, it's very unique to the blaster, but I have heard of some users slicing their hand open on the lettering on the side, so I'd recommend wearing gloves or checking for rough edges before ever using it barehanded. Mine was absolutely fine out of the box though, so I'd say it's just a small sample size that have rough edges. Another strange decision they've made is that, like the original, XYL decided to include an adapter to use a water bottle as a stock. I'm not sure who made that decision or why they did, but I'd much rather that have been left out and an extra pick rail included instead. Yes, I know there's this orange pick rail included in the box, but that one moves when you prime it, so let's just call that one the eye blackener and only use it if you want top prime. Slamfire. While I could go on a rant about how I think Slamfire is dumb, trading accuracy for a slightly faster rate of fire, the way XYL have implemented it in this design definitely is. It requires you to apply forward pressure on the grip for the blaster to even fire it, and that means you can't shoot this one-handed while, say, carrying a flag or reloading. A pretty big downside that so far hasn't cleared up from use, but knowing this downside, it didn't get me killed in any of the gameplay. No ambi, bro. Both the safety switch and the mag release are positioned for right-handed users. This one doesn't bother me because I'm a right-handed user, but it could be a downside for lefties or if you like to swap hands when pieing a left-handed corner. Despite having a skinny pusher, neither Worker Talons or XYL mags gravity drop when you hit the mag release. You need to physically pull them out. Not a deal breaker for me, a lot of blasters are like that, but for a blaster with tactical in the name, it's a little lacking in the tactical reloads department. This next downside I only found out after a day of gameplay, and that is of course the color. It might be a little hard to see on camera, but after a full day of use, this thing is covered in very visible dirt. Perhaps if I clean off the front section it'll help show the difference on camera a bit better, but white blasters are always gonna have this problem. In addition to that, the matte texture of the Unicorn, while really nice in the hands, does retain dirt a little more than a glossy finish would. Keep that in mind if you like a white blaster rather than a brown one. For my last downside, there is no rifling included in the box. For the accuracy test later on, I'll be using Gavin Fuzzy's Friction Fit B-Car, which I'll leave an out of darts link to down below. While I would have preferred to use my Saber one, there's not enough barrel sticking out to seat it on there fully. When we get to the accuracy test, I think you'll be surprised with how well Gavin's worked though. That concludes my pros and cons of the blaster. Let me know what you thought of that style in the comments down below, as opposed to going tip to butt like I have in the past. Now, on with the testing. For darts, I'll be comparing Worker against Saber, beginning with a chrono or velocity test. Okay guys, first up I've got 10 Worker darts loaded up, and then afterwards I'll do some Saber darts. These Worker darts weigh 1 gram each, so they're a bit lighter than the Saber darts that I'll do second, so I expect these to go a little bit faster out of the blaster. Let's see how the Worker darts do. 192, 197, 203, 177, 190, 188, 172, 219, so it's a little inconsistent, 187, 200, and that's all 10 Worker darts. Okay, now let's load up some Saber darts, which are 30% heavier, so I expect them to go slower. 200, 221, 204, 204, 211, 206, 200, 213, 214, 212, and that's all 10 of those. That doesn't make sense. They actually went faster than the lighter weight Worker darts. Perhaps they have, you know, thicker quality foam or something. They do have longer foam. Maybe it gives a better seal in the barrel. First up were the 1 gram standard Worker darts. They averaged 192 FPS with a kind of all over the place standard deviation of 13. 30% heavier Saber darts averaged a higher 208 FPS despite their extra weight, and had a much tighter standard deviation of 6.8. For velocity, I have to give the win to the Saber darts, which I did not expect based on, you know, physics. I saw Nabtown Nerf had similar results, so I guess there's something about the foam or the glue strength at work here. To comment on the velocity numbers themselves though, an average of 208 puts this blaster in a weird spot. It's slightly too hot for the common 200 FPS events in the US, and it's also way too low for the 300 FPS games we host here. You could try backing that spring cap out a bit on the buffer tube to lower the FPS a little though. But now let's move on to the accuracy test. Okay, accuracy test time. Notably, I am adding Gavin Fuzzy's B-Car to the front of the barrel, which adds spin to the darts as they leave the barrel. I'll leave a link to this down below. It's sold out of darts as well. Now, at a distance of 30 meters or 100 feet from my American viewers, I'll be sitting back there using a sandbag as a rest. This handguard is actually really nice for using on a sandbag because it's so low profile. And at this kind of low FPS, around the 200 mark, I'll be aiming probably around here, up in the split bark in the tree there, so that by the time it reaches the target, it'll be around the center. So it's probably dropping about a meter by the time it gets to the target. Now, ignore what I just said. With the Worker darts, I'm finding I have to aim higher than with the Saber darts. So I'm going to be aiming up probably 2 meters above the target with these. Let's see how the Worker darts do. All right. So that went high and to the left. That went high and to the right. Low and center. Center. At least they're landing on the target, although that one might have hit the cinder block below. Little left to center. Pretty close to center. Left. Left. High and right. I think they hit the white sign above. That went way over the top. The worker darts are definitely having some pretty inconsistent velocities. Some are going high and some are going low. But that's all 15 of the workers. I think we can guess how the T darts are going to do in comparison. Oh. Notably, I'm aiming a meter lower with these two. Wow. Even with a low FPS blast like this, Sabre T-darts are a massive improvement over worker. They're all grouping around the bullseye. That's insane. That is a night and day difference. I actually didn't expect it to be this dramatic. That's all 15. I can already tell which one won, but let's head back inside and show you.
To say Sabre darts defeated worker darts would be an understatement. Not only did Sabre darts shoot a 5 times smaller spread of 30 centimeters compared to worker's 150, but I had to aim twice as high above the target for worker darts to even reach it. There's definitely something going on with the quality of worker darts these days, and that's why we now have Sabre darts to replace them. Speaking on the accuracy of the blaster itself, a 30 centimeter spread is very impressive for something in the 200 FPS range. For those of you who like to run and gun in close quarters, this pint-sized blaster will give you an edge over a more cumbersome blaster like the Harrier my opponent is using here. While I personally wouldn't use this blaster because the FPS is too low, I think with some fine tuning, perhaps backing out that rear spring retainer a little, this would make a great blaster for those of you who play 200 FPS cap games. If you can get over the negatives I mentioned earlier and focus on the positives, and if you own some Loctite, there is quite a bit the Unicorn offers that other blasters don't. My favorite feature has to be that Alpha Trooper-esque pump grip, giving it a very slim profile handguard that I haven't seen on any other hobby grade springers so far. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Find it at Out of Darts using the links down below. That's all I have for you today. Like, comment, subscribe, and all of that. Here's 2 other videos you might enjoy. And as always, thank you very much for watching. See ya!